One last question, and then we'll wrap it up. No pun intended.
Absolutely.
A lot of people in my comment section like to reference Tariq Nasheed's documentary, Microphone Check, which I think is a pretty well put together documentary as well. Shout out to him. Have you watched that specific documentary, and what are your thoughts on it?
Yes, I watched it. I will be the first to admit it was well done. It looked amazing. Obviously, the information was very one-sided. Now, some would say, well, I could say that about the Latin breakdown. The difference being is that in the Latin breakdown, we are definitely saying that this was done together as a cooperative effort. African Americans, Latinos, mainly New Yorkers, and Caribbeans. His documentary is definitely one-sided, as it is only done, and every element was created and spearheaded and codified by foundational Black Americans only. That's just not historically accurate at all. And so when he claims that, well, we have the pioneers, my question is, do you really have the pioneers? Because what is a pioneer? What is a creator? A pioneer is somebody who does something that they are trailblazers. They are people who've done something that was never done before. So when we think about those people, we don't think about Grandmaster Caz, though he is a hip hop icon, but he did what other people were doing. We don't think about Lord Jamar. Many of the people in there were a handful that did maybe Coke La Rock, maybe Hollywood, maybe Sha Rock, maybe Debbie D, because they're both battling in the documentary about who's the first female MC. But I noticed they didn't include, and I've heard him say, we tried, but we couldn't get it. Okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But when we talk about a pioneer, a creator, we're talking about Kool Herc. We're talking about Grandmaster Flash. We're talking about Charlie Chase. We're talking about the B-Boys, like Batch and the Bronx Boys, like Star Child La Rock, like the Zulu Kings. So none of them were mentioned in his documentary. All he mentioned was Trixie and Sasa and Charlie Rock, and everything came through the lens and through the funnel of Black American culture, when the reality is, when breaking begins in 75, the X factor in hip hop culture are the B-Boys. That's a fact. And Charlie Rock will say that, and many B-Boys have said that. It is the breaks and the B-Boys. That was the bread and butter of the culture at its inception. But when you look at people like, when people start going to the floor, again, yes, you have the Blacks and Puerto Ricans. You have the Zulu Kings, but you also, and quiet as it's kept, the Bronx Boys rocking crew is before the Zulu Kings. The Zulu Kings don't begin until late 75, 76, based around the testimony of Charlie Rock himself. And I have that testimony. So TBD starts in 75. And this is a Puerto Rican crew. And then you have the Zulu Kings, and then you have the CC crew, which is another Puerto Rican crew. And then you have Star Child La Rock, which is another Puerto Rican crew, and the Rockwell Association. Again, these were not mentioned. And when I bring this up to Tariq, as I've had these conversations with him, he says, nobody ever heard of those crews. And in fact, there are people that believe those crews never even existed. And I just find that mind-boggling, that if you're going to talk about hip-hop culture, you got to include everybody that did this. Okay? When you try to take it back to Philadelphia and make Cornbread the founder of graffiti culture as a whole, I'm sorry.
That one kills me,
that
bro.
is just,
That one
that's
kills
not
me.
the case. That's
You got some
crazy.
23-year-old in my comment section telling me cornbread invented graffiti. I'm like, dog.
Graffiti. No, absolutely not. So yeah, other than that, I thought it was well put together. It's just, it just wasn't, and then when we get to the Puerto Rican section where he really goes in on the Puerto Ricans, I had taken that section and I did a commentary rebuttal on that section. I put it up. It was up for a day. He took it down himself because he didn't want people to see that I was going to totally rebut his arguments as to the Puerto Ricans and their contributions and what they brought. When you have him and Rock saying things like, even Charlie Rock saying things like, the Puerto Ricans came after we stopped, which was like 79, 80. You got to be out of your mind. We have people who are still alive. Batch is still alive, and he's the founder of TBB. This is circa 1975. So, Rocksteady Crew comes out of TBB. Okay, so Batch puts Crazy Legs down when Crazy Legs is a little shorty. And Crazy Legs is part of TBB until Batch breaks it up in 1979. And two people from that crew decide to start a new crew in 79 called Rocksteady. So Rocksteady starts in 1979. It is not in 1977. It is 79. TBB is still around in 77. So all of this history, he just ignores. He just runs from. He says it's not true. You're lying. Okay. What's bugging me out, Dusty, really, is I haven't heard anything from him about the Latin breakdown. Like, the only person that made a rebuttal video so far is this guy, Truth Savior. And that rebuttal video is I already put out, all he's talking about is Dizzy Gillespie. And I already put a video out to just shut that down. But it's laughable what he does. But nobody else has said anything about the Latin breakdown. So I'm wondering, okay, either they just don't want to say something because they don't want to draw attention, or they can't say anything because the evidence is there. Mm-hmm. That's my take on it.
When I first saw
What is your take? What is your take on both documentaries? Talk to me.
Yeah, you pretty much summed it up for the Tariq documentary. I think it was well put together, but the part that I just, in my heart, know that wasn't true was that, Black people are the only ones that created every single element of hip hop. So that being said, that's what I took away from that. So now let's talk about the Latin breakdown. When I saw this documentary, and I'm a student of music. Music is my first love. It was my first love. Specifically, hip hop was my first love. When I can get any information on hip hop back in the early 80s and all that, I was on it. So I've been a student of hip hop. So when I saw the Latin breakdown, I was like, oh my God, somebody finally put it all in one nice piece, because I knew, maybe 50, 60, 70% of what you were talking about. But I was like, why is everyone denying this? Why is there this new narrative now that Puerto Ricans weren't right next to Black people and didn't have an influence? I'm like, all my life I grew up knowing Puerto Ricans and Blacks grew up in the Bronx together. It's like crazy to me. And what's even more crazy to me is after people watch, Tariq Nasheed's documentary, once again, shout out to him. He did his thing with it. But when a 24-year-old who was born in 2001 is trying to argue with me, about hip hop because they saw this one documentary, I'm like, bro, just get out of my comment section. So to answer your question, I would give Tariq's documentary a 7 based on the fact that I don't believe the part about the Puerto Ricans not being involved. I would definitely give your documentary a 9. I think it's much more accurate from a music standpoint, and it just makes a lot of sense that you guys were there along the way, going way back before the 70s. So that's my take on it, man.